everybody, it's Nadia Shea from MLC CAD Systems as part of the What's New 2023 tutorial series. Today I'm going to focus on assemblies. And let's take a look at three main questions we're going to answer in today's video. So the first question that we're going to answer is how to configure what part configuration information is displayed in an assembly bill of materials. So that's a big mouthful, but you're going to see it's very, very easy with a document property. We're also going to answer the question, how to change component configuration for an assembly pattern instance. And so when we create an assembly pattern, how can we change the configuration? We're also going to answer the question, how to exclude toolbox components for an assembly level cut. And so if we're making a cut on the assembly level and it actually passes through a toolbox, how do we make sure the toolbox doesn't get shortened or nicked by that cut? So let's go ahead and get started. So for the first question, how to configure what part configuration information is displayed in assembly bill of materials, let's take a look at a part file. So you'll see here that I do have a part file in front of you. It's a rolled piece of sheet metal. And in this rolled piece of sheet metal, I have multiple configurations that I can activate and take a look at. Now, what we're actually looking at is when we look at a configuration's properties. So let me do that one more time. I'm going to right click on a configuration and go to properties. You're going to see that we have the option under bill of material options here that we can either show the configuration name or the document name when we're displaying that part in the bill of materials. Let me click OK here. In previous versions of SOLIDWORKS, the default was always document name, but now you can change that. How do we do that? Let's do this by accessing the part file's document properties. We're going to navigate to the top of the interface and click on the gear icon. From this, we get a window that says System Options, but you're going to want to look a little bit further down, and you'll see these tabs. We're going to activate the tab called Document Properties, and this is for the active part file that we have open. And then at the bottom of the tree on the left-hand side, we're going to navigate all the way down to Configurations. And we're going to see some system options that are pretty straightforward. Default bill of materials part numbers for new configurations. And you can see that it's document name and configuration name. Now again, this is only for new configurations. So you want to pay specific attention to that word new. So we're going to leave it at document name, and I'm going to show you the application behavior. We're going to click OK here, and I'm going to create a new configuration. And you're going to see that under the bill of material options, it says document name. The document name is pre-selected. That's what that option is going to control. So if I close out of this, let's go back to document properties by clicking on the gear icon, selecting document properties, clicking configurations, and we're going to change the radio button to configuration name. And we're going to click OK. And now if we come over here and add a new configuration, you can see that this menu's option is automatically changed to configuration name. And so this is a really handy tool for any new configurations. The really key thing I want to talk about here is that this is not actually going to affect any of your existing files. And so for your existing files, if you have multiple configurations, if you have a couple, if you have a dozen, if you have hundreds, again, you can change this option per configuration. And so it's important to note that when SOLIDWORKS added this option in 2023, it's important that it's only going to affect new configurations, and it's not necessarily going to affect any of your existing configurations. If that's something that you do want to modify, get with our programming team. We may be able to automate a macro that'll help you alter that if you like. So let's go ahead and move on to the second question. The second question is, how are we going to actually change an assembly pattern and use multiple configurations? So let's switch to an assembly. So I'm going to quickly switch to an assembly, and I have not created the pattern yet. So you can see in the assembly that I have that same piece of rolled sheet metal, and I stuck a big bolt, a big toolbox bolt sitting in the middle of it. We're going to use that for the last example. But let's go ahead and create the pattern. And so what we're going to do is we're going to navigate to the Assembly tab on the Command Manager. We're going to choose Linear Component Pattern. I chose linear because it was pretty easy. I already had a reference for it, But you can see here that you have circular component pattern, pattern-driven, sketch-driven, curve-driven, chain, mirror. There's lots of different types of patterns you can use. But we're going to choose linear component pattern. And for my reference, for the direction, I'm going to choose this dashed line. It's simply a sketch line that I've created. Now I'm going to activate the components to pattern box simply by clicking in it and verifying that the box is highlighted blue. Now to add the components, it's a quick click from the graphics area, simply clicking on the components. I'm going to choose the sheet metal and I'm going to choose the toolbox. Now I don't see any copies yet because I have not adjusted my spacing and my instance count yet. So on the property manager, the spacing is the very first box right underneath the reference. We're going to change that to 10. And then for the instance count, I'm just going to simply increase it using these arrows. Now, instance count is the total number of instances that component exists in the assembly. So if you see here, I have an instance count of 3. That's the original plus 2 copies. If I do 4, it's the original plus 3 copies. So don't assume that this box is the number of copies. It's the total number and includes the original. So we'll just leave it at 4. Let's click OK, and let's kind of get normal to this. So to change the configuration, you would think that you would navigate to the pattern and click on it, and we're going to choose Edit Feature. We're going to look in the Property Manager to see if there's anything we can change on the configuration. So if I navigate towards the bottom, you'll notice I have a skipped instance. So if I select this box, I get little pink dots in the graphics area where I can turn things on or off. I can do modified instance, which that seems pretty reasonable. I'm going to click on it, and if I click on the pink dot, I can change the distance from the seed or the distance from the nominal. Now, that's not really what I'm looking for. I want to change the configuration. I actually don't need to edit the feature to change the configuration. So let me show you the clicks on how to do that. Let's exit out of this. To change the configuration of a part that's part of a pattern, I'm going to click on it in the graphics area, and I'm going to move my mouse slowly up and to the right. This is the context menu. This is pretty valuable. There's lots of great tools here, but there's also a drop-down menu at the top that will present any configurations of that part file that's available to you. So I'm going to click on the down. I'm going to get all these configurations. I'm going to choose the one that I like. We're going to go for a 10-inch perforated. And once I choose that, I'm going to click OK to finalize that selection. The click OK is the part that a lot of people forget. Let's do that one more time. I'm going to click on the graphics area, navigate up and to the right. I'm going to go to this drop-down menu for my configurations and choose a different configuration. And now, instead of moving my mouse to that green check over here, I'm actually going to keep my mouse over here and look at my mouse cursor. It actually looks like a mouse icon with a green check mark on the right click. That's a quick OK. So if I right click right now, it's going to save my selection. Let's do it the fast way one more time. Click on the file, click on the part file in the graphics area, choose the configuration that I'm looking for, and then click OK. And so that's how you're going to change the configuration of a pattern instance within an assembly. And that's really, really great. A different way to do this is not to do it in the graphics area. We're actually going to navigate to the feature manager tree. So we're going to focus on this folder that says local pattern and actually shows me all of my different instances. And if you'll notice, it actually shows me the configuration that's used per instance. If I want to change it from here, I'm going to simply click on it once. And again, I get that in context menu up and to the right. I'm going to use the drop-down menu to choose a different option. Now we'll pick a 16 plane. Click OK. We're going to do that one more time. We're going to click on the line item in the feature manager tree. We're going to change the configuration here. Click OK. And you can see that it changes it very, very quickly. So 2 ways to change the configuration of an assembly pattern instance. Now the last question we're going to answer is when we create an assembly level cut. So let's do that first. When I go ahead, I'm going to start a sketch on the right plane, and I'm going to create a little bit of sketch geometry. Now I'm going to kind of break the rules I talk about in Essentials, and we're going to leave it underdefined. We're just doing this simply as an example. So if you'll notice, I've just created a funny little shape, a little slot shape, that this shape actually sits over the toolbox component. I can see it through these perforations. And so now I'm going to navigate to my Assembly tab. Under Assembly Features, I'm going to do an extruded cut. Now I'm going to do a through all in both directions, and I'm going to look at my feature scope options here in this property manager, and I'm going to choose Propagate Feature to Parts. Now a quick reminder on this. This by default is not turned on. And so what this does is you'll see the cut in the assembly, but you won't see it in the part file. And the reason why you won't see it is because it essentially it isn't propagated, which means this is the type of cut that's manufactured after the assembly is put together. If I do Propagate Feature to Part, I am creating an in-context cut in SOLIDWORKS, but that cut is going to propagate down to the part feature because I need to create the part file when I manufacture it with the cut in it. So it's important to actually turn on this option, Propagate Feature to Part. Now, as we keep inspecting it, I have a challenge here, right? So I can see that this cut is actually impeding on my toolbox component. Now, it's very, very common that assembly groups share the same toolbox, and they're actually looking at these same bolts. It would be pretty silly if I cut a slot cut out of these bolts, if I actually took a bite out of it, right? That would not make sense for any of the other components or any of the other assemblies that I use this toolbox component in. But let's take a look at what happens in SOLIDWORKS 2023. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to let SOLIDWORKS calculate that. I'm going to let it calculate that feature and go ahead and create that. And you're going to see something very special. It's super easy for me to exclude toolbox components because I literally don't have to do anything in SOLIDWORKS 2023. SOLIDWORKS, by default, is going to ignore toolbox components when I'm creating an assembly level cut. And let me show you what I mean by that. If I come back to edit the feature, you'll notice feature scope will outline all the components that it's actually using for that cut, that it's going to affect for that cut. And if you'll notice, there are no instances of toolbox. This is basically an algorithm of how SOLIDWORKS developers have designed the program. It is by default not going to auto-select any toolbox components for this feature scope selection box. So that makes it really, really easy. So we're just going to click OK and actually call that a day. So now that we've answered all the questions, I hope that you found this valuable and that you can use some of these tips and tricks as you move forward with SOLIDWORKS 2023. If you have any questions and you're a customer with SOLIDWORKS, feel free to give us a call at our support line. Let me give you that information. The number is 1-800-364-1652. Extension 2 is to reach our SOLIDWORKS team. And if you'd like to email us, you can email us at SOLIDWORKS support, 2 S's in the middle like Mississippi, at mlc-cad.com. So again, that was the What's New 2023 Assembly tutorial. I hope you guys found this valuable and that you have a wonderful day. Thanks so much. All right, bye.